Hi everyone, welcome back to Initial Education. This is Emily, your diabetes educator, and this is video 4, Ketones and Sick Day Management. Let me get this PowerPoint pulled up. You guys know the drill by now. And we will get on our way for this 4th video. So again, this is a 5-part series, so you are in the second half of all the classes. So whoop whoop, carry on. All right, so video 4, Ketones and Sick Day Management. Okay, so why do we even talk about sick day management for people with diabetes? Well, when our body is sick or stressed out, our body releases stress hormones that raise our blood sugar and increase our insulin resistance. Now, this goes way back to our caveman days of having to outrun saber-toothed tigers and T-Rexes. Our body would boost out a whole bunch of glucose so that we had enough energy to run away. Well, nowadays we don't need to outrun those things, but unfortunately we still have that hormone release when we're stressed out. And for those of us with diabetes, our pancreas cannot handle that excess glucose very well. So we need to pay much more close attention to our blood sugars when we are ill. Now, when we are sick, we are also at an increased risk for ketone development. And this is because we have that increased insulin resistance due to that stress hormone release, as well as if we are sick with nausea and vomiting symptoms, we may develop starvation ketones due to a lack of sugar in the body. And we'll get into that on the next slide. With diabetes, we also can have some slower healing times, and that's because we have these other variables that our body is working with. We have this excess glucose, we have these ketones potentially, and so it can slow down our healing time. So with that, we're all about preventing illness with diabetes and preventing ketone development. Now, a little note for people with type 1 diabetes. Even though it is an autoimmune disease, it does not mean that your immune system is not working properly. You can still fight off infection, and you are not at a higher risk of getting sick than the general population. We just want to prevent illness as much as we can because of all these things that we are just talking about. So prevention is key. So I've mentioned ketones a couple of times, and let's really learn what those are. This is something you may have heard about in the hospital, but we want to understand what ketones truly are. So ketones are the byproduct of fat. When fat is used for energy, it breaks down into small little ketone molecules and they get released into the bloodstream. Why would this happen? Well, let's look back at what we've talked about before. Our body primarily runs on glucose. That's its preferred energy source. And to use glucose for energy, we need insulin. If one of those two ingredients is missing, either we don't have enough glucose in our body because we're nauseous and vomiting, or we don't have enough insulin in our body because we have increased insulin resistance, our body will start breaking down fat for energy, leading to ketone production. People with diabetes, ketones are very dangerous. We do not like ketones, so we try to prevent them at all costs, and we can treat them at home if need be. Both of these we are going to learn how to do in today's video. So our general sick day guidelines, again, our focus is on preventing illness and also preventing ketone production. So our guidelines include checking blood sugars every 3 to 4 hours while we're awake and once overnight. That's to evaluate, do we need more correction doses? Do we need more insulin in our body to use that glucose for energy to heal? We also want to check for ketones with every void. This means every time we pee, we're checking for ketones. And then we're going to be using our DKA decision tree to determine what we need to do. And we'll talk about that in a couple slides as well. We always want to give our basal insulin as scheduled. Do not skip a dose if you are nauseous and vomiting. We still have that background glucose being secreted from our muscles and our liver. So we need that background insulin. So always give that basal insulin as you normally do. The last thing we'll do is use our sick day toolkit, which we will talk about now. So our sick day toolkit is comprised of 3 different ingredients that we want in our body at all times to prevent ketone development and prevent ketones from getting worse. So these 3 ingredients are carbohydrates, fluids, and insulin. So the reason we have these 3 carbohydrates we want in our body to prevent starvation ketones from developing. We need carbs in our system so our body has sugar to use for energy. Now, when we're sick, we are going to be giving insulin as normal for those carbs. And if we are nauseous and vomiting, we're not going to give insulin for those carbs until we've kept them down for 30 minutes. We don't want to take insulin and then vomit all those carbs up and be chasing lows. The second piece of the toolkit is fluids. Fluids we want to maintain hydration and also to flush ketones out of our system. That's how we get rid of ketones is by peeing them out. So if we're eating, we want to have carb-free fluids, clear fluids. Water is, the source of life. So water is best if we can. If we are not eating because we are nauseous and vomiting, then we want to take small sips of carb-containing fluids every couple of minutes. So these types of fluids would be Sprite, Gatorade, ginger ale, that type of thing. Things that have a little bit of sugar, a little bit of nutrients in them to get some carbs and fluids all in one fell swoop into our body. Now, we're just going to be taking little sips every couple of minutes. We want those carbs to stay down. And again, if we are having problems with vomiting, we do not give insulin to cover those carbs till they've stayed in our stomach for 30 minutes. The third piece of our toolkit is insulin. We need insulin to utilize that glucose for energy and to stop ketone production. So for our insulin, again, we're going to take that basal insulin as we normally do. We don't skip that dose. And then we're going to be checking those blood sugars every 3 to 4 hours, giving correction doses, and also using our DKA decision tree to determine if we need higher correction doses. Again, we're going to get into that in a couple of slides. So overall here, our sick day toolkit, carbs, fluids, insulin, we want all 3 of those items in our body at all times. All right, so ketones. Ketones we learned about, it's the byproduct of fat. And ketones in general are acidic and can build to very dangerous levels in our bodies. For people with diabetes, ketones can lead to diabetic ketoacidosis, or DKA, which requires hospitalization. We can get really sick from ketones, so we want to prevent them as much as possible and treat them as soon as possible if they are present. Ketones do have symptoms if they are present in your body. Common symptoms include kind of stomach flu-like symptoms where you have abdominal cramping, you might have some nausea and vomiting. So if we have any of those symptoms, we're for sure checking for ketones. Now, there are other times we're checking for ketones. So we already talked about before, we're going to check for ketones anytime we're sick. We're also going to check for ketones anytime our blood sugar is over 300 twice in a row. So what that means is our blood sugar was over 300, we gave a correction dose, and 3 hours later, we are still over 300. That's telling us our insulin did not do its job properly, and our body did not use that glucose for energy. So we need to see if our body started using fat for energy in the meantime. So those are 2 scenarios when we check for ketones. Whenever our blood sugar is over 300 twice in a row, and whenever we are sick. Now, the good thing is ketones can be checked at home and managed at home as long as you're having mild symptoms. So ketones are checked with urine strips. They come in a vial like so, just like a very tall test strip vial, and you can see a picture on your screen as well. Ketones we check for in the urine. So when you pull out a ketone strip, it's long and skinny like this, and there's a little spongy square on the end of it. We are going to pee onto that spongy square, or pee in a cup and then dip into that cup. If we're a baby, we're going to put cotton balls into our diaper and then use those cotton balls to squeeze urine onto these strips. All right, so we've now doused the sponge in urine. We are going to wait 15 seconds, the magic number in diabetes. The sponge is going to turn a shade of pink, and that is going to tell us how much ketone level we have in our body. So on your vial, there's going to be this scale showing us our results, and you can see it better on your screen here. So the results, there's 6 different boxes. The first 2 are negative and trace. We're not concerned. Woohoo. So the last 4 boxes, small, moderate, and large, they're the pink up to the kind of dark eggplant. Those results we consider positive ketones. Those are actionable. We need more insulin in our body. So whenever we have small, moderate, or large ketones, we are going to refer to our DKA decision tree to determine next steps. So again, checking ketones when we're over 300 twice in a row. When we're sick, we're going to pee on the strip, wait 15 seconds, line it up with the color on the vial. Small, moderate, and large ketones are positive ketones. Now, we always want to keep ketone strips at home, and a little thing that we often forget is we should keep ketone strips at school too. So you want to keep active strips there so that we can check for ketones and manage them as needed at school. Okay, so I've mentioned the DKA decision tree a couple of times. Our DKA decision tree is used to determine how much additional insulin we need if we have ketones present. This is something that we'll review at your week 2 appointment, and we'll review it in the future as well. But we do need to start talking about it so that we know what to do. We do always want to keep a copy of this available at home, so this will be sent to you through My Children's if you have a My Children's account, and you can save that PDF as a document on your computer, print it off, keep it on your fridge, do something with it so you know where it is if needed. If you ever need help navigating the DKA decision tree, you can always call us as well. All right, let's launch into it. So our DKA decision tree. At the top here, it's simply telling us that we're checking for ketones. When are we checking for ketones? Blood sugar over 300 twice in a row, and when sick. Excellent, I knew you knew it. So if our ketones come back negative or trace, we're going to go down the left side of the decision tree. If they're negative or trace, we're going to give our normal meal and correction bolus as needed. We're going to check a blood sugar, check for ketones again in 3 hours, and we may just need to continue giving correction boluses every 3 hours while we're sick. But pretty much no huge actions needed. Just give a correction dose, recheck your blood sugar and ketones again later. If our ketones come back positive, they come back small, moderate, or large, we're going to go over to the right-hand side of the tree here. When we go down a couple of boxes, this is where it tells us how much additional insulin we need to manage those ketones. Because if you remember, insulin is how we get rid of them. Insulin allows us to use our glucose for energy, therefore ketones can break down and exit the body. Okay, so if we have small or moderate ketones, we need to give our usual correction bolus plus 50% extra. So that means, let's say our normal correction bolus for whatever our blood sugar is, our normal correction bolus is 2 units. We need to give an additional 1 unit for a total of 3. Let's say our normal correction bolus for this blood sugar is 6 units. We need to give an additional 50%, which is 3 units. We're going to add that to our original 6, and the total is 9. So we need that increased correction dose. Now, some people think of it as like 1.5 times their correction. Some people think of it as 150% correction. Some people multiply their correction dose by 1.5. Whatever works for you, you just need that increased 50% correction. Now, if our ketones come back large, they're at the far end of the eggplant scale, the last two boxes, then we're simply going to double that correction dose. So if our normal correction is 2 units, we're giving 4. If our normal correction is 6 units, we're giving 12. So this double, 200%, whatever works for you, but you need double your dose. After giving that increased correction dose, we're going to follow that 3-hour rule. Wait the full 3 hours before checking the blood sugar again, and then check for ketones again. We're going to circle our way back up to the top, and if we have ketones present, we're going to give another increased correction dose based on that blood sugar and ketone result. Now, it's pretty normal to have to give multiple increased corrections every couple of hours when we're sick, just because we are so insulin resistant. So don't be super concerned if you have large ketones 1 hour, 3 hours later you have small, 3 hours later you still have small. Just keep working the decision tree. If at any point you are feeling nervous and you're needing assistance, please call us. When you call us, there is an urgent line for illness and ketones option. That's the whole purpose of it. So if you get nervous, you want help with the math, please call us and we are more than happy to help. A really important thing to note on this, for these increased doses, they only apply to your correction bolus. We do not change our carb dose. Our meal bolus stays the same. We're only increasing the correction bolus to get that blood sugar down and get those ketones out. Okay. Again, we'll review this again at your upcoming appointments, but please review this. Try to get this really ingrained in your body so that when you are faced with ketones, you know what to do. All right, so let's wrap up sick day management. Big overarching thing, check for ketones. Every time our blood sugar is over 300 twice in a row, and when we're sick. Then we're going to refer to this sick day, the DKA decision tree to determine our next steps. With sick day, over-the-counter medications like Tylenol, Mucinex, Delsym, anything over-the-counter can be given as needed to help your child feel better. The back of the box often says, check with your doctor if you have diabetes. This is us saying, go ahead. Usually there's a tiny amount of sugar in those medications, especially liquid medications, but it is such a negligible amount that we don't care. Just give the medication, make your child feel better. When you are sick, you do need to refer to your primary care clinic for illness management. So if you have strep throat, ear infection, broken arm, that all needs to be handled by your pediatrician. We are more than happy to help with blood sugars and ketones, but we can't help you with that primary illness. That does have to go to your pediatrician. And again, if you are ever unsure what to do with sick day management or ketone management, just call our urgent line. Our phone number is here, 651-220-6624. During business hours, you choose option 4 for the diabetes clinic, and then option 3 for the urgent line with illness and ketones. We're going to go over this in the next video in depth, but in general, just call the clinic, follow the prompts if you have illness with ketones. All right, that concludes our ketones and sick day management video. Up next is our final video, resources and additional information. May not seem exciting, but there's some good stuff in there. All right, guys, see you at the next video.